Okay, so I had a question on how to approach this one by completing the square. So this is y squared plus 18y equals 14. So when we are completing the square, what we're trying to do is get this in the form a plus b quantity squared, or it could be a minus if that sign's a minus right there. But anyhow, a plus b quantity squared equals some number on this side. And the reason is, if I can have a dog appearance here, there we go. If I can get it to here, then I can square root both sides. And then once I square root both sides, that gives me a plus b. The square root undoes the square equals this plus or minus whatever was over there. And then I can finish solving that out. So the idea of completing the square is to get to this point right here. And the way that we get there is we make something of the a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So anything in this form factors to a plus b quantity squared. And again, if that had been a minus, then that right there would be a minus. So completing the square is quite literally figuring out what you need to put right here to make it be one of these. And the way that we do that is we take this middle term. The a is like the a squared here, so we can ignore the y's in this case, we're kind of representing the a's. So I need to undo this 2. And so what we do is we take the 18 in the middle and we multiply it by a half. Or divide by 2, that is the exact same thing. In that case, that would make 9. So what we just found by dividing this by 2 is b. But I don't want b, I want b squared. So then what I got to do is square that result, and I get 81. So 81 is what needs to be right here in this equation to make it factor this way. So that's what completing the square is. You cannot understand a single thing I just said over here and just literally learn the process, and it will work every time. So that was the why, and then let me try to do a little bit smoother job of explaining the how. So if and pretend for a second we had been given say this 14 was over on this side, and so it's minus 14. I would have moved it over and set it up just like this. And I'm going to take 18, and I'm going to go half of 18, half that middle term is 9, and I'm going to square that, and that's 81, and then that's going to add to both sides of this equation. So this is going to be y squared plus 18y plus 81 equals 14, and then plus 81. And as long as I do the same thing on both sides, it's legit. So what that does is now takes this and turns it into what's called a perfect trinomial square, this thing over here, and now I can factor it and make it in this form and then use that method for solving. And so just to kind of relate it back to the factoring we've been practicing recently, if we said what multiplied to be 81 and added to be 18, we'd say 9 and 9, which that's the number we squared, because that's what we're making is this a plus b squared. So instead of writing it y plus 9, I'm going to write it as y plus 9 squared, because that's how we want that to look for a root. And then, let's see, that's 95 over there. And now I'm in that form, so I can root both sides to undo the square. So square root undoes square. And then remember, when we do that, we have to allow for the plus or the minus on there, because like, for instance, if I have x squared equals 25, x could have been 5, or x could have been negative 5, because when I square it, it's positive. So that's why we have that. And we got y plus 9 equals plus or minus square root of 95. And then just bring the 9 over. So y equals negative 9 plus or minus square root 95. And then 95 should not reduce because that is 19 times 5, so there's no perfect squares in there. If this happened to reduce, I would still need to do that. Completing the square does the exact same thing as the quadratic formula, but in a case where this right here is an even number and this is 1, you almost always end up with easier math using this method. In addition to that, we'll need this method when we get to, I believe, actually later in chapter 5 we'll need this method for a second, but when we get to chapter, I think it's 10, chapter 10, we'll use it a bunch, so definitely worth learning the technique.